I cannot really call them skills, but I learned what to consider when I am translating. Before, my idea of translating was more like rendering one language into the other, but I got to study a lot about other factors that affect translation, and I started to think more. And the considerations, I would say, rather than skills that I learned.
I think that I learned some important trans- uh, strategies for translation, such as adaptation or deletion or universalization and so on. So I got to I had to know the strategies, and I nowadays I usually think about the strategies and the reason why the strategies are applied into the translation. So I think that my perspective, to translation is more is become more broad.
I never know about this some translation theories or some kind of scholars about studying the translations, but I learn them and learn about all of these theory stuffs in this semester and last semester, and I think that really helped me to how to construct my translations basics or something like kind of that.
I learned about the linguistic aspect such as pragmatics, where syntax, which is helpful for me to learn another language, especially English. So I think it is helpful for me to improve my English skills as well as translation skills.
If you like something very much, you should make it into your job, right?
Right.
So I like reading very much, and then I appreciated reading a lot. And then before, I was able to appreciate the translators' work without any judgment or just enjoyed it. But after I started learning that, I think my pleasure is taken away. I started to analyze, criticize, why did people do this way, and then how can I use this piece when I'm reading? So I read for pleasure, but the pleasure was partially taken away.
I tried to many papers or homeworks for my studies, but I think that I can do well to some extent. So even if it is somewhat hard, but I know that it will be beneficial for me, so I can do these things while I am enjoying this.
Of course, the tons of homeworks is very not good experience, but that really helped me to improve my skills or something like knowledge. About in case of the getting something a work, translation work like a part-time job or kind of that is really hard because I don't have enough time to do that because of the homeworks or because I'm not verified translator, so it's really hard to get something like work.
I'm not sure I can say this is negative aspect because when I look at the text, before I started learning translation studies, I just read the text, but now I analyze the text, and I try to find out the structure of the sentence and try to divide the meaning units. So it takes more time for me to read text, and sometimes it's really stressful because I need more energy to analyze the things.
I know a few people who work as a freelancing translators, and then what they complain all about is about how tight their deadlines are and how scarce their payments are. Actually, it started from my personal interest, and when I was traveling around, I realized that all the signs are inconsistent. So I started to search. The more I searched it, the more variations I found. So I started to be interested in, and then I got to know that this year in June, that one government body decided to unify the terms, which was quite a good thing. But the methodology, their approach was rather the thing that I couldn't agree. So yeah, but still, I think if you pay attention really, even in Seoul, there are so many signs that which are inconsistently translated. That's because every city and every group district have different philosophy of translating, and it is done by not the city level, not the country level. It's done by the office levels. So everybody's different ideas are all projected to their sign translation.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that makes a big difference from a tourist's point of view? Yes or no?
Yes. I encountered a couple around express bus terminal, and they were so confused because the map said it is Banpo Bridge, but the sign said Banpo Daegyo, so they didn't really know that Banpo Daegyo means Banpo Bridge. So the map they had and the sign we had were different, so they were quite confused. So I explained to them, and then they found their way out. So then I realized this can be quite a serious problem for travelers.
Maybe you asked me about the shift in translation, right?
Yes.
Yes. I found some translation shift in ICT websites, such as the sequence of the sentence is changed, or the meaning of the sentence sometimes change. For example, in Microsoft websites, they say is ready to do, but in Korean website, the translation says that sorry, I can remember.
Or you don't have to remember it exactly, but
yes.
just give us sort of a general sense of the change, of the shift.
Yes. So in this way, the websites changed the ST sentence into some TT sentence, which many TL receivers can accept more familiar, or so I think that the translators wanted to deliver the meaning in the ST by more familiar ways to tell issues.
I think that depends on the publisher because each of the publisher has their own style, so there's also the styles they prefer, so they ask the translator to translate it like that style, so or they ask the translator which they prefer. So I think that depends on the publisher, and I think it is very different styles on the translating.
Okay, so give us 2 or 3 examples of the different styles.
Well, there, as the Hyunsu said in her presentation, there is also the more word-to-word translations, near of the word-to-word translation, and also there is a sense-to-sense translations. And well, personally, I prefer sense-to-sense translation.
Okay, for somebody who doesn't know the terminology that well, please define sense-to-sense translation.
Oh, right. Well, sense-to-sense is like kind of not literally translating the original text into the target text, into the target language, and it changes a bit. That is, well, more appropriate to the target culture. Oh yeah, they also do that. Or something like the cultural specific items that are not very familiar with the target culture.
Mm-hmm.
And they changed them to more familiar things in the target culture, like kind of that which I said before, like changing genie,
Mm-hmm.
the fairy of the lamp.
Right.
Yeah. Changing the genie into the 도깨비 in Korean. Well, I think it did not success to translate it in very 100% of the original text because well, I did not say in my presentation, but there was a phrase like that Huckleberry Finn uses, like I knowed, not using the I knew, because he was not educated well. So it shows the personality of the Huckleberry Finn, but in Korean translated version, they deleted them all, so we could not suppose that supposed by the phrase in target text in translated version and of the Huckleberry Finn's education's ability, and I think that is I feel very sorry about that translation. So it was very something like 아쉽다. What can I say in this English?
What is 아쉽다?
Very feel sorry.
Oh, okay.
Like kind of
It was a kind of translation mistake. They were too. They did not try to capture the feeling enough. They did not try to capture the sense enough of the original text.
Yeah, I think they missed the point of the author tried to.
Okay, yeah. So it was not sense to sense. That was an example of not doing sense to sense translation.
They deleted. I think it was just not right after the war, but about 70s and 80s, that we needed a lot of help from the USA, and there were a lot of business ties, and then the business cooperation increased dramatically around that time, and then around the 70s, and Korea sent a lot of workers to Vietnam or Middle East to the construction site, and at that time, people, I think, somehow realized the need of international communication ability, and I think English was picked up.
Maybe in terms of Korean to Japanese to Korean translation, some people who know about the Japanese animation, they will be accept the translation. The translation without any further explanation about the Japanese cultures or Japanese puns. Yes, but in terms of someone who rarely know about the Japanese traditional cultures or Japanese world, they may not be able to understand the Japanese puns or culture related humor in Japanese animation. So I think that many translators have agony about how they translate the st to tt, by which way. For example, oriented to TT or oriented to ST. Yes. Maybe some people think that fan serving is better than official translation at all time, but I think that actually not always. I sometimes see the official translation better than fan servings, such as in an animation episode, a young child says some Japanese puns, but in Korean translation, the translator translated the Japanese puns into 토끼가 우리에게 엿을 주었네. Yes. The 엿 is the Korean slang, and it is generally thought that young child doesn't say such slangs, but the translators say use the slang to translate the Japanese animation. So that many animation fans in Korean prefer the translation because it is very fun and interesting. They think, yes. So I think that sometimes official translation can be better than fan servings, but generally, it is true that generally the fan serving use more diverse strategies to translate the Japanese animation. For example, phone note or head note, and so on. So I think that yes, many people still think the fan subbing is better than official translation.
I agree with that because most professional translators has time pressure, so they cannot make their best work. So sometimes they misunderstand the source text, so they made wrong target text, and also there's no time to reflect their work, so the quality of translation is not so high. So I think the environment for working as professional translator should be improved first, and then professional translators also changed their mind for their job. They should be more professional for their work, and they have to have pride in their job. Mostly they use the footnotes, so they explain the humor in the bottom of the subtitles, and because most of the humor delivered in wordplay, so it is very hard for target readers to understand the wordplay if they don't know about the source language. So the fan servers explain why this is humor, or explain the words. They put the definition or the sounds of the words below the subtitles, so in order for the readers to understand that is humor. And the other strategy is they put the source language itself, not translated. So in that case, if the target reader know about the source language, they can capture the humor. But if they don't have any knowledge about that language, they cannot find any humor at that context. But the fan servers don't care. Everybody can catch the humor or not. They just try to express the ST's humor, and their target readers, the fan servers, promising reader. They consider the fan servers consider their leader not as a whole, but as for a specific person who are very good at English or very good at specific field. Yes, I can find that things, because the fan servers are free to use their language. They sometimes use slangs or bad words, so, and they don't need to be strict to use proper expressions. So they freely express what the ST says. So sometimes the subtitles itself is very funny.